for something you ain't ever seen. You better get moving, ready or not. It's about to go down, here it comes now. Better get moving, ready or not. It's about to go down, here it comes now. Get ready. Get ready. Earth is shaking, the ground is quaking. Here it comes now, here it comes. Get ready. The fire's blazing, the storm is raging. Here it comes now, here it comes. Get ready. You better get moving, ready or not. It's about to go down, here it comes now. Better get moving, ready or not. It's about to go down, here it comes now. Get ready. Get
Yeah, okay. I like to do things the way I do things. And when I do things, I like to do things the way I do things.
It's been a minute since I've been out solo dolo, and I'm fiending for some vices on the low low. I'm gonna do what I do when I keep it on live. Wanna move, wanna groove, wanna make that thing pop. Pace yourself, brace yourself, things about to get wild. Relax yourself, release yourself, things about to get wild. Things about to get wild. Things about to get wild. I do it like this, I do it like that, 'cause I like it like that. I do it like this, I do it like that, 'cause I like it like that. Do you like it like that? Do you like it like that? Yeah, I like it like this. Yeah, I like it like that. I can tell that something's got you feeling loose now, and your hands and body moving in a groove now. Put your hands and feet together with the beat now. Put your hands and feet together with the beat now. Pace yourself, brace yourself, things about to get wild. Relax yourself, release yourself, things about to get wild. Things about to get wild. Things about to get wild. I do it like this, I do it like that, 'cause I like it like that. I do it like this, I do it like that, 'cause I like it like that. Do you like it like that? Do you like it like that? Yeah, I like it like this. Yeah, I like it like that. Like this, like this, like this, like this, like that. Yeah. Like that, like this, like this, like this, like that. Yeah. Not that, like this, like this, like this, like that. Yeah. Like that. Yeah. I do it like this. I do it like that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our April Prepare to Launch virtual session. My name is Bria Black, and I'll be one of your MCs for today's session. I am a program manager for emerging tech talent at Target. And so I help people who didn't start off knowing they wanted to work in technology transition into a full-time position as a software engineer. Fun fact about me, I really love Beyonce a lot. I had a Beyonce themed birthday party back in 2019. And so that's what's actually really special about today's Prepare to Launch is that I get to co-MC with Tara. And Tara, can you introduce yourself to the people?
Of course. Thank you, Bria. My name is Tara Byers. I'm a principal product manager at Sezzle, which is a financial technology company located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. One fun fact about me, I played basketball all throughout high school and college. And one time I played basketball against a girl that was 7 feet tall, and her family just got named in the world record book as the world's tallest family. I'm going to share the link to their family in the article. And I'm very short, so it was an unparalleled match. But enough about me. All of the brilliant folks listening, our hope is that your involvement in these sessions today will give you all of the tools that you need to really take off and launch into a meaningful career that makes you happy and helps you pay the bills. So no pressure speakers, but we've got a bunch of people that are really eager to hear from you today. I know I can't see all of your faces out there, but the Prepare to Launch team is so happy that you were able to make it here today. Without further ado, Bria, let's kick this thing off.
I am so ready. Let's get started. So first, I'd like to introduce Jonathan Chang to the stage. Chan, excuse me. Jonathan is a senior software engineer at Netflix. So a fun fact about Jonathan is that he loves running half marathons and full marathons for fun. Okay, so he is serious about running. Jonathan has something really special for us today. Listen up, because he's going to give us the roadmap for his career that he wished he had in high school. So Jonathan, the stage is yours.
Hi, everyone. Let me get this screen share set up for us real quick, and then we'll get started. Oops. Great. So thank you, everyone, for the warm introduction. Thank you for having me here today. It's a bit odd. My name is Jonathan. I am a senior software engineer at Netflix. And it's a bit odd saying that I have 14 years of experience now. I've worked in fashion, biotech, advertising analytics, defense, and now streaming entertainment. And if I were to go back in time and tell my high school age self that I'd have this career and privilege, I wouldn't believe a single word that was said. I used to hate the idea of sitting in a cube and kind of working all day. But here you can kind of see in this photo my path so far. You know, I went to USC for computer science. I worked on military vehicles. And then on the far right, one winning hack day at Netflix about 3 years ago. So coming back to my story, I used to hate the idea of sitting in a cube in front of a computer all day. And you know, guess what? That's exactly what I do right now for a day job, right? But I'm one of the lucky ones. I get to get paid to do something I really love, which is building software. Before I start now, I just kind of want to take a minute to ask all of you, you know, what do you think you're going to be doing in the next 10, 15, 20 years? Maybe better question is like, what are you going to have for lunch today? Throughout the early phases of my career, I had this nagging question of, what does it feel like I'm missing on something else? You know, and I sat with this problem for a little bit. It took me a few months to kind of understand where it was coming from and what I wanted to do with this idea. And I remember one day, a coworker asked me this question of, or kind of stated to me, if you keep up what you're doing, you're going to have a great 30-year career at this company. And I had this kind of epiphany of like, what have I done? You know, I kind of said, I don't want to be working at one single company for the next 30 years on a single product. And I kind of had this like core life crisis of, you know, what's next? What do I want to be? What do I really want to do out of my life right now? And kind of questioning what's the next big thing. At this point in time, I had been observing how the internet and software really taking over the world, and asked myself these three kind of questions, you know, related to software engineering. Do I want to become rich? Is there fame to be found in being an engineer? Or is it, do I want to make the world a better place? And I'd be lying to say that I suddenly had like this vision, this dream of what I wanted to do the next day. And, you know, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do, like work at Netflix, for example, right? So, you know, it took me some time to understand what I've been looking for. And that kind of be summed up by the fact that I realized I wanted to start my own company. Before, during, and after high school and college, my friends and I had a lot of ideas about starting our own business and entrepreneurship, but nothing ever really happened. So in today's talk, I kind of framed it as, if I could go back to my high school age self and give my high school age self like 13 minutes of advice, this is the advice I would give you, right? So in the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to kind of go over, you know, what I would tell myself 20 years ago, and kind of this idea of building a roadmap, right? So I want to kind of go over how to build a roadmap, which means, finding your values and your mission, what's important to you, right? And then your mission is, how do you want to live and obtain those values and goals? And then the third part to that is, what information experiences you need to get there, right? These 4 sections are kind of the process I've been following to approach my career, and what has really led me to building a startup while working a day job at Netflix, and where I'm in the process. So let's take some time to figure out, let's pick this whole thing apart, right? So when you go out into your life, you really need to figure out what's important to you. And those are defined as, the values and missions in your life. Your mission is the why that'll keep you going as you hit rough patches or when you want to take a break and celebrate your wins. When you're starting a career, a new job, or relationships, it's really important to always have an idea of what's important to you. And values can be defined as, important things to have that are experiences or intangibles that have significant meaning to you and you alone, right? So on this slide, I have examples of, like, maybe it's family time, maybe it's money. There's also less selfless things such as courage, loyalty, compassion, friends, traveling, video games, sports. And you can see here, like, a little bit of everything on there. When you start building these lists of values, create a long list. But you have to do the hard work of choosing the top 3 or 4 that are important in your life that you can't live without. You have to shorten this list because there's only so much time and energy you have to spend on those values. It's also important to call out your values will change as you go through the different seasons of life. It's okay that your mission and your values change. I gave you some examples already, but for me, I used to be really obsessed about cars and friends and kind of going out and having fun. But now it's like, I enjoy family time. I enjoy my friends more. I enjoy cooking. Just to illustrate that things have changed as time has gone on. And it took me a bit of time in life to understand that what was important to me. It wasn't until about 3 or 4 years into my career that I understood that building a company is really important to me, family time and my personal health, right? And coming back to the idea that these things will be changing, I like to check in with myself every quarter, every 6 months to ask, are those values, those things that are important to me, are they still really important? If they're not, what do I need to change? What do I need to remove or focus on so that I can add new values and remove the old ones? So with those values defined, you can start thinking about your mission, right? So the question is, what can you do with your skills, time, and future experiences to help you live a life promoting those values, right? What can you do to live that mission to get to those goals? Now, tying it back to my narrative about starting a company, I knew I wanted to start a company at this point in my career, but I had been working in defense, and I realized that I really needed to work more in web technology. This kind of takes us into the next part of the discussion, which is collecting data to assemble your roadmap. And so in this phase, with your values and your missions in hand, you need to take the steps to create a roadmap that lets you execute your mission to live those values, right? So for me in this phase, I really didn't know much outside of my academic career and the handful of internships I had during college to really understand, like, what was it like to build a company? I had been laid off, already from my first job after 18 months and rehired. So I really knew I wanted to build a startup, but I had no idea where to start or had any practical experience in building a company. So the question I was faced with is that, how would I educate myself moving into a different industry and get the right experience to build a software company? And finally, the question I really distilled it down to was, how would I get into a web tech company after working on military vehicles for the last 2 years of my life? For me, I was balancing a day job and hunting part-time. So I had to put a plan in place, right? I couldn't waste my time just scrolling through the internet and talking to random people. But what I did was I talked to coworkers who I'd known worked in different industries. I reached out to friends and I reached out to family. Once I had those conversations, I had a really good idea of what my next steps are. And I found my answer. It was biotech. A close friend of mine had this conversation with had been working as a chemist at a biotech company in San Diego. And she gave me a huge set of resources, blogs and websites and email lists to join and sign up to understand that that's where I can take my skill set after working in defense for so long. A few months later, I'm sitting in my first biotech job testing web software. And I'd be lying though if I said that it was smooth sailing. I was still following my plan of, transitioning, collecting information to work in the biotech field, but this job was really bad. I had a bad manager and the work wasn't really, what I wanted to be doing. It wasn't helping my mission of starting my own company. So I began looking for another job, and I went back to those values I had earlier of like, okay, I want to start a company. I want family time. I want money. And I realized at this moment in time, I myself had just to join a startup. There's no way around it. So now my roadmaps included this idea of joining a startup to help, fill in that experience gap that I was having. And this takes us into kind of my next point of my, oops, let me do that. This idea of, let's see, executing your roadmap, right? So, I want to kind of tie this analogy back to like, we've been following this idea of like NASA putting a man on the moon, right? A roadmap is more of like this idea of, planning a trip to the Grand Canyon. You have lots of stops along the way, but you still need you need to know how to get there, right? Maybe you'll stop in like Salt Lake City or Colorado on your way to the Grand Canyon, but that's kind of this idea of a roadmap, right? It's just this way of this capturing what you need to do to get to the end point of this journey. So building a roadmap, is this continuous process that as you learn, grow, and collect experiences, it's important that you keep your mission and values in mind as you obtain those experiences, right? So with the NASA example, we wanted to put a man on the moon, but that's like kind of the end goal. Now, the roadmap you start building, think of it as this North Star that will help you make decisions, that will help you guide decisions you make to get towards your goal. It's important to call out, though, that parts of your roadmap will be continuously in flux. It won't always be 100% done or complete. You'll keep revisiting and collecting information about every milestone or waypoint you plan on hitting along the way. This is where building a career roadmap differs from flying and landing on the moon, right? Or even going to the Grand Canyon. In the roadmap, planning sense, for NASA, there's zero risk. You have to get that astronaut on the moon and get them home safely. But for your career, you have to realize that the roadmap, things may not go according to plan, and that's okay, right? We have to tolerate a lot of risk in our careers as human beings. The takeaway I want to leave you with on this point is that take your time with your values and your mission to ask yourself, where do you want to be in the next 3, 5, maybe 10 years down the road? It's okay if you don't have answers. The objective is that you start thinking about this way sooner than later and kind of walking in that general direction. Coming back to my story, I wasn't happy working at that biotech company. I looked at my values and my mission of starting a company and changing the world a better place, and working in this role didn't fulfill that at all. But at the same time, I realized that, I realized that, I needed to add another waypoint. I did need to join that startup. So I started, job hunting again, looking for a startup that fit those values and, and helping me live that life. And then all of a sudden, I spent 4 years at this. I finally found a startup doing ad analytics. And I spent 4 years learning the ins and outs of building a software in this really fast-paced environment. I went from doing test automation, writing test cases for the web app we were building, to presenting UI designs in front of our CEO. And on this slide, you can see that, on Tuesday nights, we'd even go out and play dodgeball every Tuesday night, excuse me. Somewhere along those 4 years, though, I realized that I actually finally had what I needed to start building my own startup. And my idea was that I wanted to take some of my learnings from the biotech company with some of the analytics I was learning at the startup and build a healthcare dashboard for diabetic patients. So I would take all this data from insulin pumps and glucose meters devices that help patients regulate their blood sugar and put them on a dashboard. So you can see in the next slide, the demo I've got here. This is the first kind of demo I put together, the first app I put together while I was working at the startup. Really rough cut, but kind of served the patient's needs, right? And at this point, it seemed like, the plan was working really well. And I was making progress on the demo. And I was kind of enjoying my time working at a startup. But then this one fateful day, I received a call from the Netflix recruiter saying, like, come work for us. And here we are 6 years later. In the last years, I've learned so much. Coming back to Silicon Valley has enabled me to the skills, the experience, networking, and the knowledge I need to build a successful and sustainable company. But the question is, where does that leave me at my startup? Well, I launched this version, back in 2018 and got around, 300 users. Fast forward to 2019, 2020, COVID happened. I took a step back and I realized, okay, am I checking myself? Is this a good place to be? Do I need to do modify things? And I actually saw that it was a great time to rewrite some of my demo to really be better, have a better product for my users. So I did that. And you can see in the next slide here, this is the new app that I put together through COVID. So a lot more polished. It helps the users kind of get the information they're looking for. And I'm getting ready to launch this in the next few months. But, coming back to the roadmap idea and the thing of change, right? I want to kind of wind down this talk by saying that my gut says that Netflix is probably one of the last pieces I need before I can make the jump to work on my company full time. While I'd like to say that I'm leaving the company really soon, the reality is I'm not going to. I will be launching my startup soon, but until I can make money with it to pay my bills and take care of my responsibilities, I'm going to keep learning, collecting experiences, and building software at Netflix as my day job while focusing on my startup. Now, in closing, oops, not that one. What I want to say is that your career is going to be a long, long journey. And just to recap some of the points I was calling out earlier is, you need to find your values and your missions, find the things that are important to you, and find a way to live those values, right? And then from there, the second point is collect data and experiences that help you live those values and execute your mission, right? So kind of like going to the moon or planning a road trip, what are those things you need along the way to get you to that final destination? At the same time, realize that that's going to change as you learn and grow. And finally, don't forget to have fun. Your career is a long path. You're going to have a lot of great times doing it. So enjoy it while you still can, and don't lose sight of what your end goals are. That winds down my talk for today. Thank you everyone for your time and appreciate it.
Jonathan, that was awesome. Thank you so much. You have such an inspirational story, and truly something that we can all draw from this is taking the time to think about our why and our values and how we can use our time, talents, and energy to fulfill what we want from our lives and add value to the world and those around us. Such a powerful message today. Thank you again. Up next, we have Caroline from Hack the Gap talking to us about how technology is really for everyone, no matter where you are, what you're interested in, what kind of music, whether it's music or writing or coding or drawing, there's a place for you in technology. And a fun fact about Caroline is that she's an immigrant. She taught herself how to code, which is so impressive. Caroline, the stage is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Tara. Let me share my screen. Okay, so my name is Caroline Karanja, and I am the CEO. Sorry, I don't know why this decided to autoplay. Give me 1 second. Let's try that again. Okay, there we go. And I'm the CEO of Hack the Gap. So I'll kind of share a little bit about myself, and then we'll kind of dive into the way that I see technology. So first of all, I just want to say, Jonathan, thank you so much for just sharing your insights. It's really cool to hear how different people get into technology. And I think it's even more inspiring to kind of help get down to that point that it doesn't matter how you get into tech. Different people come into this path in different ways, and it's always exciting to hear how different people have come into it. So here you'll see kind of a bunch of random things about me. The first thing is that if you are from anywhere in Minnesota, I went to Macalester College, which is over here in St. Paul. And so I have a strong love for Macalester. And so I always like to give them a solid shout out. And my degree actually, so I'm going to go over here. So my degree in college was actually as an English major in American Studies. And so as you heard, there was nothing in there about computer science or learning how to code or mathematics or anything like that. And so when I graduated college, I got really interested in just generally how to build websites. I thought it was really interesting and really fun that you could come up with an idea for something, and with some solid hard work, you could create a digital representation of what you wanted to do, right? And so a lot of this just had to do, from my perspective, with the amount of time and access to different resources that you needed to make that happen. But I thought that was really exciting. And as someone who considers themselves a creative, it was really fun to think about having this tool called technology that I could really fully express myself in, right? And I think because I didn't major in some kind of formal STEM field, I saw this a lot more as a hobby, to be honest, than I ever did a real job. So it was, to me, it was the equivalent of like, going, playing football or something after school, or really anything else that's more of like a hobby, right? And so that's really how I got into technology. But then my first jobs really, they were in tech, right? So it was more like doing project management for digital products or doing some data analytics work and stuff like that, but nothing formally in terms of being able to like be part of the engineering team. And so when I was in work, I also, like Jonathan, had a quarter life crisis. I feel like this is pretty common actually for most people. But during this moment, I needed to take a moment and reevaluate where I was at, right? So I spent all of this time in a school setting, and all of that was really to get me into a more intense school setting with college. And then it felt like college was really just putting me into another situation where I was sitting in that, 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 type of scenario. And I really just needed a moment to evaluate whether or not that's the path that I wanted for myself. But because I had been doing all of this exploratory self-learning, and I would stay up really late at night and, like figure out how to debug something through like reading tons of Stack Overflow, if anyone knows what that is. Like this was really before boot camps and all of these other tons of resources. It was a lot of self-discovery. But because I'd been doing a lot of that work and had started to build up my network, it was actually really straightforward for me to accidentally transition from a formal work environment into an entrepreneurship type of work experience. And so I had worked for really big companies. I had worked for a startup that ended up growing quite quickly while I was there. And so I had this span of experience that I'm really grateful for today, because it helped me understand how to build different types of products and how to work with different types of people. And so I think the one thing that I learned from that is just that it's really important to take advantage of any learning opportunities that you might have. So even if you're, working in a place where you see like, okay, this isn't where I'm going to be forever, for that moment that you're there, try and figure out what you can learn from that situation and from working with one another or learning new skills, because you never know when you'll be able to use those, right? So here I am in my quarter life crisis, and I'm like, uh-oh, I need a break. I need to like take a moment and breathe. And part of it was just a little bit of just needing a mental break. And part of it was just needing to, again, sort of reevaluate how I wanted to spend now the next, 25, 40, 50, 60 years of my life. And so that's where I dove into entrepreneurship. And so I started off by building different products to help people address different challenges, right? So I worked with people who were running or just starting up online stores. So building like Shopify stores when they had a lot less templates for running like your online store. So I would like custom design those, all the way to working with government entities to help stand up like individual web applications, websites to help people do different things. And so the thing that I found that I really loved and enjoyed was just that ability to decide what different types of projects I wanted to work on. I loved that the projects had a beginning, a middle, and for the most part, an end. And so I could test out different things. I could work with a health company, you know, for the first half of my day, and then work with a startup the last part of my day, right? And that was really exciting to me to just be able to kind of continue to switch things up. But in the midst of all of that, I saw a problem which I wanted to help address, which is the fact that in the midst of this, I was doing some volunteer work with helping young girls, you know, learn how to code or get into technology. And we were constantly looking for books to give them that had some kind of CS component, right? Computer science component. And so I didn't really see that. So, you know, I saw a problem, I saw an opportunity, and I asked, you know, what could I do to help address this this challenge that I'm seeing? And so I pitched a book project to a local publisher, and they said yes. And so that's what you're seeing here is that it's like a series of 4 books that just focus on different concepts around coding, and they're all for really young kids. So, you know, like first, second, third grade, around there. And so, you know, one of the things that I ended up learning a lot during my earlier part of my entrepreneurship journey is that if you see something, or if you don't see something that you want to see, try and think about, you know, are you in a good situation to help figure out what a potential solution for that could be? Do you have the time to do it? And, you know, try and figure it out, right? Try and do it, try and dive in. And it doesn't have to be this really intense, super complicated, you know, multi-billion-dollar type of product or idea. You know, sometimes it's just about figuring out where, you know, as was mentioned prior, where does your personal mission align with something that you have the skill set for, and going ahead and doing it, right? And so these are just some of the random things that I started to figure out as I was going through my entrepreneur journey, and got really excited about just the possibility in terms of the ways that technology can play a role in that. And so one of the things that became really clear to me right off the bat is that for a lot of people, we have this vision of what tech is, right? We do think of it, and honestly, oftentimes it is sitting in front of a computer and doing something on that computer, right? But I think that there's like this cliche of someone, you know, sitting there and like all by themselves with this intense music, and they're just sort of coding away, right? And some people do that. But for some other people, the way that they're engaged in technology is that they're the ones who decide the look and feel of a product, right? So they get to decide, they get to have an influence over, you know, what type of font should we use? How should we put together the colors? You know, how should we put together the screens, right? So even thinking about your experience using an application like Netflix, right? Someone coded it, but someone also decides the visual look and feel. Someone else decides the way that you interact with it, right? Whether, again, it's something like a player like Netflix, or if it's a shopping app like your Target app, right? And so there's all of these different people that are involved in the technology that you're using every day. And so part of that is, you know, we have to change up the way that we think of how we like can be part of the technology ecosystem. So it's not always a person who's coding as you're seeing here. Sometimes it's people on a whiteboard and they're drawing things up. And so there really is a place for you to be able to figure out, you know, where are your skill sets? What are you most excited about? And I promise you there's a way to engage in the technology sector with that. And so, as I mentioned, there's all of these people that come together to help make any one piece of tech possible. And sometimes those things are happening behind a laptop, but sometimes they're happening outside of that. You know, when you, again, are looking at any kind of application that you might use, even whether it's Instagram or TikTok, or whether it's, you know, a regular website that you might go to, or even a search engine. There's people who are deciding what is the exact copy, so the writing that's on the page, people who are doing some of the testing to make sure that it works, people who are taking the photos of the products that you're using. All of these things come together to create the technologies that we use today. So there are roles for photographers, for copywriters, for data people, for folks who are really into the visual part of things, people who are doing tons of research. They want to understand more about the problem, hear what customers have to say, and how to make a product that makes them happy. Whatever your interests are, there are multiple ways that you can be part of this amazing ecosystem that we call our technology ecosystem. And there's opportunities for all of these different types of positions in all of the major, for sure, all the major companies that you see around. But I would say even more excitedly in some of the smaller and more startup type of environments, because you can get to try out all kinds of different things. So even though it takes a whole community, a whole team to make our digital products possible, I think one of the things that is really cool about being an entrepreneur and trying to, create solutions for challenges or opportunities that you see for yourself is that it's a great opportunity to test out different things, right? So you can play the role of the photographer and take photos and see how, whether or not that sparks an interest. You can play the role of the UX designer and figuring out how the interface will look, or you can try and actually build the application and see, what languages do you enjoy coding in, and how do you want to, interact with the product that you're building. So I think the cool thing about being an entrepreneur, being part of a startup, is that you get to try out all of those different things. There's a lot more flexibility in that. And so again, there's, this ecosystem is full of all of these different types of roles. And I would encourage you all to think about the things that you enjoy most about your day-to-day lives. So if you are the kind of person who really likes, writing research papers on a particular topic, if you're the kind of person who really loves to think about money and how to spend it and how to budget for it, if you're the kind of person who likes to code things out of nowhere, right, which that was very much me towards the beginning for sure, there's a way to be part of this larger ecosystem again. So, what does your tech journey look like? Mine, of course, even though it was in a very straight arrow, I feel like the best representation of this would just be like a bunch of really squiggly lines. And I'm going to be honest and say, I don't know where the squiggly lines end. I feel like I'm constantly in this moment of like, okay, well, what's next? What do I want to do now? How can I continue to learn and grow? But that is a key part of it, is just continuing to, think through different types of ways of addressing the things that you're seeing, but then also be curious, be an ongoing learner. So here you are in this event, but, think about, what's your next opportunity? And if you don't see it out there, you can make it your own. I think the one thing about technology that is really exciting, especially in this moment, is that tech can pretty much go anywhere right now, right? Your next job may not even have a title as of this moment. We may not know what it is, right? The jobs that you will be looking at 5 years from now with the world of technology expanding is probably not a known role today, but you can help decide what that role is, again, by just continuing to grow your skill set, continuing to pursue the things that you are curious about, and being really excited about being an ongoing learner. And so, one of the things that has always kept me really excited about this space is to look around and see who else is around me and what else they're doing, right? And so as part of that, one of the things that we did at Hack the Gap, again, I saw an opportunity or a need, which was a lack of visual representation of who was in my local tech ecosystem here in the Twin Cities. And I decided, you know what, I'm sure other people are seeing this very same thing, and surely enough they were. I'm going to put together a visual representation of who is in our tech ecosystem. And so that's what I did. So we put together this Hack the Gap book project. And in it, we just showcase all of these women, all of these non-binary individuals who are in tech, who are doing really interesting things, everything from the Internet of Things to VR, to coding, to design, to being entrepreneurs and starting up their own software as a service type of companies. And this is, for me, again, filling that need, filling that gap that I saw a challenge and decided, okay, do I have the skill set to do it? Do I have the capacity to do it? And went ahead and created a solution that I felt added value to our community. And I'm really excited about, the way that we're seeing all of this shift within our ecosystem, where people are working within their formal jobs, but then also testing out different things and thinking about entrepreneurship as something that is really flexible, but really more importantly, something that's for everyone. So thanks again.
Caroline, thank you so much for that talk. Oh my gosh, you dropped so many gems. And I think that you made such a great point about how if you don't know what you want to do, it's okay because there are so many opportunities in tech. And if you start a tech career and you don't like it, you can always change your mind. And if you don't want to work in tech anymore, you can always start your whole job and just create something from scratch. So the opportunities are endless. Thank you so much. And I hope we get to interact more. So I also have the pleasure of welcoming Phil Terrill, the founder and CEO of SoleSafe, which is a startup providing a digital platform for sneaker collectors. Okay, fun fact about Phil. His first business, Burks and the Bailey Bow Ties, was featured on NBA on TNT with Shaq, Charles Barkley, Kitty Smith, and Ernie Johnson. Now that's a slam dunk. Phil, welcome to the stage.
Perfect. Thanks, Bria. I appreciate it. It's funny thinking about that business in particular right now. So let me share my screen, and hopefully you guys can see everything, which I think you can. Yes. Okay. Cool. So as Bria mentioned, so I'm Phil Terrill. I'm the founder, CEO. Maybe I did this wrong. Yeah, totally did that wrong. Let's try this again. Okay, here we go. Right? Can you all see this? Am I crazy?
Yep, looks good.
All right, cool.
Got it.
All right, so I'm Phil. I'm the founder, CEO of SoleSafe. I'm pretty much going to amplify a lot of what you've heard already. And my take on it is probably from a multiple points of view, right? From working at a large company to working in a family business to working in my own company. And so the title of my presentation and conversation for today is The Blueprint, an Insider's Guide to Win in Tech. Before I do like most conversations, I don't give you an agenda. I more like to focus on expressing gratitude first. And so it sort of sets the stage for who I am, how we've built our company, and just in general, I think it's a great practice as a human being to thank the people that give you platforms to share your story. So, I'd like to thank Target, the Prepare to Launch team. I saw Microsoft on there, so shout out to the Microsoft folks, and just everybody else that had a hand in putting this together. So hopefully this is helpful, and I definitely am excited to share my experience. So I'm gonna give you my journey as well. So when I left college, so I went to a historically Black college in Alabama called Tuskegee University. I'm actually getting my MBA part-time right now from the University of St. Thomas. And so I'm a very local product of the Twin Cities, went to high school here, was born and raised here. And so very, focused on this community, but had an opportunity right out of undergrad to go work in the beer industry, which was, an interesting transition right out of school. And when I reflect on it, was actually my first foray into tech. I just didn't know that it was called tech, I guess, at that time. And I was really responsible for doing what they call space planning and assortment. So I was responsible for setting the strategy for the different products that would appear either in a Target or in a Walmart, whether in the cooler or outside the cooler. So it was pretty cool to see that and kind of think back in my first step into tech. And then once I left Miller Coors, I actually went to go work for our family business, my stepfather, his second company in facilities management, where I feel like I got a really great opportunity and was super blessed to really get the experience of like an apprenticeship. So being able to see from a direct point of view how a CEO, a founder of a company, built and scaled a company from just one person cleaning bathrooms everywhere to scaling a company to 600 plus people, across the broader Southeast part of the country, and well beyond in terms of services offered, what he started doing. I actually had a life-changing moment, which, there's another story for another day, for me totaling my car from drinking and driving, that allowed me to recalibrate and really rethink, I think to Jonathan's point, like, what did I want my path and my, direction to be? And so I actually left the family business and started my career at Microsoft. So I moved from Atlanta to Fargo, North Dakota, which is, for those in Minnesota, right next door, and had the opportunity to really get, I say, deep into tech. And, I learned everything from, cloud computing with, the Azure platform, all the way to business strategy in my last role, which was in business development for Microsoft Teams. Was really a great opportunity for me to see a business from multiple angles, one of the largest companies on the planet, and, and just really seeing how complex business can be, and the people inside of that make those things run as equally important to that. And then I'll tell you a little bit later on about why and how crazy it must be to leave a company like Microsoft and go start your own company. But my whole presentation really is focused on 5 key lessons that I think I've learned in my entire career, and that I continue to focus on and practice actively today, even running my own company and just being another person as part of organizations, mentoring and all of that, which is hopefully these are things that you can write down with a piece of paper, or go back to the recording later and tactically use, which is lesson number 1, own your brand. And so one of the things I learned, I think my mother is actually on here, from my mother and my parents, is you have to really dictate and own your story, own how people talk about you, own how you talk about yourself, and own how you position your brand so people can position it for you when you're not in certain spaces. And so one of the things that I learned while I was at Microsoft is the idea of creating your personal trading card, right? And so you can write this down. We call it at Microsoft, it was a brand card, personal trading card. It's very similar to those who, like, maybe you collect trading cards or Pokemon cards. It's very similar, right? It's kind of like a hybrid of your resume and something as compact as that, where, think about in the business setting, where you're able to, in one shot, sort of share who you are, what you're all about. And it's also something that another person can take with them to go talk about you to someone else, maybe for an opportunity, maybe it's for, a special project, whatever the case may be. And so I use this very intentionally as one of the tools that helped me be, I would say, a game changer at Microsoft, especially early on in my career, about how do I navigate, how do I share and build a personal board of directors, right? And finding people that supported me, that wanted me to be successful, whether they were mentors or sponsors, all the way to identifying and highlighting where I have opportunity areas. You can see, I know you're probably reading this, but like the top areas where I think I need to improve, it's great for me to call out all the things I'm really good at, but it's also probably even more valuable to someone to know what I'm not good at and why I'm seeking out these experiences, or whatever that might be on the personal side or professional side. So you can at some point take a screenshot of this, go create your own, but I think it'll be super helpful as you navigate either into going into college, going into a career, changing jobs, whatever the case may be. And then lesson number 2, invest in relationships. So I'm a strong proponent of making sure that you put the same energy that you have into like an idea that you do into the people that could help you achieve it. And I'm not gonna necessarily say I'm a statistician, but I do believe that these numbers are, very true from both HubSpot and CNBC, which is like this first idea or this first number that 85% of jobs are filled through networking. Well, I believe in that wholeheartedly. It might even be greater, right? Because it's in this idea of, well, if you don't know anybody or aren't getting connected to people, how do you know about opportunities that might exist, that are out in the spaces that you want to be in? And then the other side of this is the jobs that aren't published, right? Which aren't publicly available. Well, it kind of goes back to like the old adage of, it's not who you know about what you know, it's about who you know. Well, that's super true, right? I think mostly every promotion that I received specifically at Microsoft was through the people I knew, not necessarily about just my performance or my track record of what I've done or what I might know, but because I started to invest and build relationships with the right people in the right spaces, that helped me get some of the other opportunities that I was looking for. And that's absolutely true in tech. I will tell you, like, Microsoft is a monster large company. SoleSafe is a startup. But if you don't know me, how do you find out about an opportunity in SoleSafe, for example? It's probably unlikely until you start to build a relationship with me. I'm gonna give you some other thoughts about why and some tips around what's helpful when you're networking though, and building these relationships under this sort of idea and invest in relationships. So the first one is like, be super intentional about this. One of the things like I learned really early was it's one thing to reach out to someone, but it's more important to have an idea of why you're reaching out. What's your intended outcome? How can you mutually benefit? Not just how you can benefit. It's super important in the idea of building a network. The second one is make deposits. So it's very similar to like checking accounts or bank accounts. At some point, you're gonna need to make a withdrawal. But if you don't have anything inside of that account, you're either gonna get a notice that says insufficient funds, right? Or you're not gonna be able to do anything. And so this idea of building relationships or networks that could help your professional, personal, entrepreneurial, sort of journey is to continuously make more deposits than you do withdrawals. And then the third one, which I think tactically is the one that people really mess up, is the hard work is in the maintenance. The hard work is continuing to invest, continuing to reach out, to continuing to make it intentional about the connections you have, which is something that's been super helpful to me, especially as an entrepreneur, is, like with my investors, these relationships were built over time. It wasn't like, hey, I need money, give me the money, right? Like, I don't benefit from that type of environment, and a lot of people don't. And so it comes back down to how intentional was I in making the deposits? So at some point, somebody could invest or somebody could make a connection or whatever it is for me. And then what I'm going to do is give you what this looks like from my point of view in practice, which is do your homework. Like, part of intentionality is doing the homework, doing the research, seeing who else is connected to who, understanding about their company, maybe it's their background, whatever the case may be. It's like being super prepared. So as you get into a conversation, you're not caught off guard by the idea or the ask that you had when you went into the conversation. But more importantly, like, what can I do to prepare myself to let this person or this group know I'm super serious about building an equitable relationship and a mutual relationship with them. And then the second one, I think this is like pointed out already, but it's super obvious, is like use your tribe, like use everyone around you and the resources, just like a prepare to launch. Like, after this is over, you should be on LinkedIn trying to connect with the presenters and the hosts and everybody involved, so you can continue to expand the network. Because like degrees of separation are super real in both professional and entrepreneurial spaces. Like, I might know somebody that you really need to talk to. It might not even be me, but I'm not going to introduce you if I don't really believe that the connection is worth making, right? So just make sure that you use your resources. And then the third one, which is I think a pro tip, free game, if I could give it to you. It's easy to forget to do. Like, you reach out to me and say, I'll connect with you in a month. Well, if you tell me that, I'm going to probably remember that. I might write a note down and say, so-and-so is going to reach out to me in a month. But if you don't, that means, well, you just wanted something from me. It was super transactional. So just set the reminders in your calendar, just like I do for sneaker releases. Like, I do the same for people I need to follow up with. So just maybe a pro tip, maybe you do this already. So lesson number 3, fly at different altitudes. So I put this in here because I learned rather quickly in all the stops that I've been on my journey that it's not just about what I know and who I know, but it's about who I know at different parts of a company, both vertically and horizontally. And so for SoleSafe, it might be great that Phil, the founder. You might need to know Yaz, who's over our brand and our community. And so it's just really learning how to fly at these altitudes. And this is a real life example of me and my sponsor when I was at Microsoft, Judson, at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. So this is the summer of 2017. I had just had a great year. I didn't know Judson prior to them asking me to do this. But what ended up happening is years later, and even today, Judson and I still talk. Judson's still a tremendous supporter of mine. Judson is the number 2 person at Microsoft. He reports to the CEO. He runs all the commercial business at Microsoft. Right, and so that's one person at a super high altitude, but I also knew the same janitor that cleaned and emptied out my trash can. The relationships were just as deep, even though the conversations might have been different. And I made those same deposits over and over again with Judson. So in this note, it's really around these relationships should happen at varying levels of a company or of a community or whatever it might be. And that at some point, hopefully, if you do this right, they'll translate into things that happen for your career or for your company that are game changers. And so for me, this is me and Judson in front of the entire Microsoft sales organization. So it changed my trajectory in the company because of performance and the relationship I built with Judson. So you can use that sort of illustration for whatever it is you're trying to do. Lesson number 4 is experiences over titles. So a lot of people get caught up in I need to be this role and it needs to say senior this or CEO. I tell people all the time, I'm not the CEO. I don't care about that. I care about making sure that people in the company, even though we're a small team, have what they need to go do what makes them dope, that makes them super great. Otherwise, I'm not good at being a CEO. And so the other point, that was just mentioned, I think it was Caroline, is there's so many things that you can do in tech, right? That you can do across the board. And I didn't know this until I got into like a monster company like Microsoft, but I just thought it was like coding and that's it. Like if you don't code, you're out. Well, you could be an influencer and be in tech. You might not have to code a day in your life. And all it is you have a really great following and a product like Xbox or whatever it is, or maybe it's a product that Target is releasing, wants to partner with you, and they start talking with their product team and there's a whole, tech strategy around it. And sure, now you're in tech, right? And you didn't know it, right? Or you want to design something and you just design something at home all the time and you can be an illustrator. There's all these different avenues to get into tech that I don't think we think about because of what we most commonly see. So just take some time to really do an inventory of like, what do you really love to do? What do you like to do? Where do you spend your free time on? And I can guarantee like that exists. Like it exists or you can create it. And then the last one for me, like the lessons is this idea of like leaping into our fears and our curiosities. So that's what happened with me and SoleSafe. I'm like definitely a sneakerhead. I still have my first pair of sneakers, got from Freedman's, if people are familiar, in North Minneapolis. I have hundreds of sneakers, like great. But what I really did was say, I have an idea, I have a passion for something, and I'm gonna bet on myself, very similar to the entrepreneurial story you heard earlier, and just go do it and see what happens. And so this is me at Target Field in September, prior to an accelerator that I did with Techstars and the Minnesota Twins. So the Minnesota Twins are an investor in SoleSafe. This moment here for me is more validation that I took a leap on my own fear, which was leaving the safety of Microsoft for the idea of creating my own company, SoleSafe. And I ended up having the Twins be one of my investors. I quit my job October 15th last year. I was freaked out. I was like, I don't want to give up my benefits and my travel and all of that. And was like, where am I going to get this money from? To Jonathan's point, like, got to pay these bills. And, that ended up being a great decision, right? To pour into and to really focus on my ideas, my passion space, figure it out. It was super complex. I don't know all these things. I'm still learning every day. And what that ended up doing is seeing on the other side is being able to actually go into a venture community or an investor community that I didn't know anything about and raise over $1 million for our company in 4 months, and this was like a solo effort. And now we are starting to hire people, it's all about like now growing. And so I think the point in this for me is like, whatever your idea is, whatever the job is or the career, the experience, like go for it. Because you just don't know what the other side looks like if you don't sort of take the leap. So I'll recap this really quick, which was the first lesson is own your brand. Second one, invest in relationships. The third, learn how to fly at different altitudes. Fourth, experiences are more important, at least to me, than the titles that go ahead of those experiences. And then leap into your fears and your curiosities. I don't think we're going to answer questions, but thank you guys for the time and hope you all took something away from the rather efficient discussion.
Thank you, Phil, so much. That was so wonderful. I love how you turned your passion into still getting paid, and the building relationships, personal board of directors, building your brand. I know it can sound like a lot of work, but the message to the audience is start now, take Phil's advice, start now, start small, and start building up your brand and see where it takes you. That's wonderful, Phil. Up next, we have Celeste to round us out. She'll be our last speaker of the day. Celeste is from Mural. She is a senior director of product design at Mural. Celeste is from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and she got a degree in graphic design. And get this, she didn't start off in her degree using a computer for her graphic design projects until she was almost done with college. Clearly, technology has come a long way in a very short time. One more fun fact about Celeste, she was the first employee at Mural. Take it away, Celeste.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Let me share my screen. Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this. And my story resonates with the other ones a lot. So let me use the timer at Mural just to time box myself. I'm Celeste. Thank you, Tara, for the quick intro. And here's a map. Here's where Argentina is, if you didn't know. So quick note, I'm using Mural for this quick presentation. So Mural is this big space, visual space where you can visualize anything. It's a digital kind of whiteboard. We like to call it the visual thinking canvas because you can connect the dots. And here you can also collaborate with your team remotely or in a hybrid environment. Lau is here. Lau is one of my colleagues. Hi, Lau. Let's do it more dynamic. So Lau can also work with me in any meeting. We can drop ideas and do all kind of fun stuff while we're working. So hi, Lau. Thank you so much for joining. Lau is another product designer. She's commenting. And she joined us with this adventure. And well, a little bit about Mural. We've been using Mural for designing Mural since 2012. And these are some examples of what we do with Mural. We run planning meetings. This is a template we use for that. We practice one of our designers' mantras that is show, don't tell. That's why we like to visualize everything in our work. We, of course, run design critiques at Mural. We do all kind of meeting and planning. And this is a fun one. We also try to make our meetings really engaging. We use icebreakers. And in this case, the team was actually designing their own digital workplace. So here we have Lau again, and she's customizing her own digital workplace. So this is a little about Mural. Right now we have 10,000 of teams and in big companies that have trusted Mural for effective ideation, for guided teamwork, to use visual methods like we are showing in this example, where you can just have a template and have a team working on different ideas and creating team alignment and team building. So in a way, our mission is to inspire teams to connect and innovate while bringing purpose and intention to the collaboration process. So that's a little bit about Mural, but let me switch and go back to my personal journey. And I wanted to share a little story. When I was in high school, actually, I was at that moment where I had to decide what to do with my own future. And that was a difficult choice, right? I had so many interests. I had so many motivations. I didn't know how to make that decision. And somehow I had these two final options, let's say. One was to become a lawyer, and the other one was to become a graphic designer. And even these two doesn't look really compatible or similar. What was behind this was that I was that kind of teenager that was observing the world, observing what was wrong about the world, and I wanted to fix it. That was my inner motivation. That's why I was thinking about becoming a lawyer or a graphic design. I wanted to fix the world. I wanted to make a difference. And I had this strong belief that as humans, we can do better. I believe in people. I believe on we can achieve together, right? So that was my inner motivation. Here you see Lau again. And so somehow I picked graphic design in between those two. And later in my design studies, I learned that the concept of designs comes from the Latin word designare, and designare meant in the past to draw a plan. And that was referring to actually to think about the future and draw a plan on paper. That's where the Latin word designare, that's where the design concept comes from. And design disciplines took that idea. And I really like this because that was exactly how I saw design and what resonated with me about design. This idea that you imagine a better future and you can be intentional about it. And many of the speakers mentioned the, the idea of being intentional, and that's relevant. That's exactly what we are talking about here. So that resonated with me, and honestly, I had no idea what I was doing. Graphic design in the 90s was, you know, designing branding and magazine design and brochures, and actually times for like so funny, and I could never have imagined how tech was going to change my path, that I would learn HTML a couple of years later. Of course, tech was changing not only my path, the world's path, and internet, access to internet, being able to actually have this job that I have now, working from Argentina, working in a team that has developed this tool, this solution that is serving tens of thousands of teams around the world. I would have never believed that. But I guess the reflection here is that when you find something that resonates with you and that motivates you really, really hardly, and you be intentional about it, somehow everything aligns in a way. So if I look back, it makes a lot of sense how I started and what I'm doing right now. And I'm still at Mural after 11 years, and because I'm still challenged by the problem that we are solving. And I think that's this idea of being intentional has been present along my whole journey till now. So with time, it all makes sense. But let's go back to Mural now. Let me share a little bit more about the Mural history. So how did Mural start? In 2011, one of the founders, Mariano, an actual CEO, was actually designing a video game for his previous company. And when he was designing this video game, he was collecting all kinds of images and visual references. He was designing a video game about emotions, and he was putting everything into a 60 slide deck. And he remembers showing and explaining these ideas to stakeholders and going back and forth in the slide deck. So he had these crazy ideas and he was trying to connect the dot, and he would go back, he would re-explain things. And he realized right away that that was distracting the audience. And actually, they got distracted and they couldn't get what Mariano wanted, that he really wanted them to contribute to his ideas, right? So in a way, the format and the mindset, the format of a keynote, of a PowerPoint presentation didn't have the affordance for the audience to contribute, to have feedback. They were more in a judging mode, right? So they were saying, oh, these are good, is good or bad, like in a pitch deck or whatever. So he had this insight that we needed something else. We needed something more visual, less linear. And that's where he drew it on paper. So this is the first sketch Mariano did back in 2011, where he thought about the first version of Mural. And he actually convinced these two guys, Agustin and Patricio, that are founders. And I had the amazing opportunity to join the team at the very, very beginning. And what did we do with this? Well, we crafted early prototypes, of course. And more important, we started to ask the fundamental questions about from any startup. Who's the user? How are users going to discover the value of this solution? Is there a market for this? Are we too early? By that time, there wasn't anything similar to Mural. There wasn't a digital whiteboard concept. So it was kind of a new category. And we really didn't know if people would get the value of this. Is this something that something fundamental in people's workflow? Would they use this every day? We didn't know, of course. Again, we had no idea. And what did we do? We learned. Again, a learning journey. We did a lot of interviews with people that were using real sticky notes and were working with the creative process. We observed a lot of people. We engaged with subject matter experts. We studied the creative process. We organized meetup. We created a community. All of that has been shared already in previous chats, in previous talks. And we realized that the most important is to be in this continuous discovery mode, something that we mentioned in the design process. And I really like this concept that it's kind of cliche, but very important, that it's to fall in love with the problem, with the problem, sorry about the Spanish, not the solution. And this is key because some entrepreneurs tend to fall in love with the solution and stop listening to the customers. And that's a critical mistake. And why I'm saying that? Well, I'll tell you a little bit more later. But what happened after that after listening to our users and having contact with them by many channels, we iterated. And in a way, after 7 years, more or less, we did it. Our solution was being used by tens of thousands of teams. They were using our solution for design thinking, for agile methods, also for education. Mural is very strong in education, by the way. And big enterprise were scaling design and agile practices on top of Mural. We were growing at a very good pace. And fast forward, thank you, Lau. Fast forward a little bit to 2020, the pandemic hit, and the whole world changed forever. It made it created a transformation on how people work and how people innovate and how they run their meetings and everything. And tools like Mural have been key drivers of that transformation. We had the chance to enable remote and hybrid teams to imagine new possibilities. We noticed that they started using Mural for all kinds of team dynamics. Like they were building projects, aligning on processes and plans. They were doing everything with Mural. And that was another learning moment, an inflection moment. And again, we kept listening. And we discovered that there was a new insight in a way. One side of that cultural revolution wasn't being addressed very well. People were doing their work remotely from anywhere, but still there's a deep feeling of disconnection. People are suffering from Zoom fatigue. There are interpersonal and cultural cracks. These are some quotes from our users. And one more time, by constantly listening and observing our users, we discovered unmet needs and new opportunities. And we had the chance, we are in this moment where we are reframing the problem. We know our powerful, flexible toolset is only one piece of the puzzle. So just wrapping up a little bit of reflection moment. To me, not only my personal journey, but also the Mural journey, it was a continuous learning journey, as somebody said before. It was about finding something that resonates with you. It was about being intentional the whole time. It was about becoming an expert on the problem space, very, very important, and keep listening, keep listening, keep listening, keep listening. I can emphasize this more. And that's, in a way, keep your beginner's mindset. So with that, I want to thank you so much. And I want to thank you on behalf of the Mural team, that it's 900 people over 23 countries now. So thank you so much.
Amazing, Celeste. Thank you so much for your presentation. I loved how interactive and cool it was. To our participants, thank y'all so much. I think we're about to wrap it up. I hope that you're feeling like you're the next game changer. If not, we got to start all over. No, I'm just kidding. But we've learned so much in the past hour, how to, navigate different career journeys, how to work in a company, how to win in technology, how many opportunities there are in technology. And we got a really in-depth look about a really cool company. So with that, Tara, let's wrap things up.
Oh, let's do it. What a day. I don't know about you all, but today has left me excited and wanting more. Please join us back here next week for our final Prepare to Launch session of 2022. On behalf of our Prepare to Launch team, thank you to all the speakers from today, such positive and uplifting messages. Thank you to all the attendees for coming, and we hope to see you next week. Have an awesome weekend, everyone.